I'm making my own way. But I stumble and I falter every day. But I love my baby now. Well, I love my baby, I'm still learning how. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Stay with me.
Hello, and welcome to Pathways to Parenting Success. My name is Dr. Jan Hittleman. I'm the Director of Boulder Psychological Services, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to the first of our series this school year, entitled Parents Speak Out. And we have a great group of parents that are here with me tonight that are going to discuss a variety of issues. And we really encourage you watching at home to be part of the conversation. You can do so by going to our website, boulderpsychologicalservices.com, and submitting questions online. We'll get them right away, and we'll be able to ask our panelists. So please do that if you're watching from our home audience. This is the second year of the Pathways series, and this year we really wanted to bring parents more directly involved. So we do have some panels like last year that are expert panels that we will be discussing different issues throughout the year, but we also have several panels where we're going to have parents join us as part of the panel to add their voice in terms of their experience with their children. In fact, we have another show coming up on October 3rd called The Bully and the Bullied. And we're hoping to have some parents join us for that panel as well. Parents that maybe have struggled with this issue, either having a child that's been bullied or maybe was the bully at school. It's a tremendous challenge for schools across the country. And I'm looking forward to including a parent voice in that conversation. We would even be open to including students as well. If you have any interest in participating, please contact me through our website, boulderpsychologicalservices.com. I want to thank our partners, the Boulder Valley School District and the Boulder Valley Media Alliance and Channel 22 for making this program possible. We will also be offering this year, once again, free talks at the Meadows Branch Library, which is in Boulder, Baseline and Foothills. And the first workshop is called Launching Instructions. It will be on Monday, September 19th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Meadows Branch Library. And this will be an opportunity for parents to learn how to keep your teen from remaining a perpetual adolescent. So please join us for that free workshop. And we have another one coming up later this month on September 26th called Helping Parents Get a Clue. And this is an opportunity to actually bring your teen for an open discussion between teenagers and their parents. I'm sure it'll be very dynamic. So consider those as well. All of the information about all of our free talks and workshops is available on our website. Well, let's get started. I also want to mention we have a new format this year. The shows will run from 7 to 8 p.m. instead of 7 to 8:30. I would like to first introduce Eugenia Brady. Eugenia is a parent, and I will let her kind of introduce herself. Eugenia, welcome.
Thank you, Jen.
Maybe you could let our audience know a little bit about yourself and what brings you here tonight.
Well, I'm here as a parent tonight, as you were mentioning, and I'm very honored to be here tonight. My part here being tonight will be share my experience as a parent of a child with a disability. During the years that since my son had a diagnosis on autism, even from the moment before that, when we were trying to figure out what was going on with him, then I became involved with many groups and workshops, and I attend groups of parents, support groups, and things like those. And so seeing all the resources and the information, I decided that it would be good for me to try to help some parents that didn't have the access to those resources. And so in time, I joined the Autism Society of Boulder County, where I still serve as a board member. And I am also the co-chair for the Parent Engagement Network. And it has been a real honor for me to participate this way and get to learned so many things from so many parents. I also work with the Boulder Valley School District. I have been working in the school district for pretty much 14 years almost. So I during all these years, I have had the experience to meet many parents, all kind of parents from different cultures and languages and all kind of abilities and all kind of different families, really. So tonight I am sharing my experience as a parent of a child with a disability.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if you could just tell our audience a little bit, Eugenia, about the Autism Society of Boulder County. Is it a resource for parents who have children who struggle with this?
It is. We do have, not a real big board. So for all the parents out there that are watching tonight, and I would like to encourage you, if you are a person who works in a community with people with disabilities, if you have a child with a disability, if you have a family member who has been affected by autism, if you have a friend, if you have any child that you would like to help, or any individual as a friend who has been affected by autism, I would like to encourage you to come and send us an email, because it would be great to have more volunteers and expand our board. So that would be great. And so I would like to invite people also to visit our website. You can even Google Autism Boulder, and that will take you to our website. And then in the website you can see all not just the events that we have, but we have resources. We have parent support groups that you can check out over there. We have different fundraisings during the year that has the purpose to help the families to get respite. And for those who are not familiar with respite, is the chance for a family or a parent who spend many 24 hours, we all have 24 hours as a parent's job with our children, but for some of us, it's really challenging and can be really stressful. So the Autism Society offers respite for these parents. It's kind of on a scholarship where they can go out, maybe with their wife or their husband for dinner, to watch a movie, and that money that they get can serve to maybe pay for somebody to watch the child while the parents are out for a moment.
And my understanding, Eugenia, is that we're seeing more and more kids being identified as autistic over the years. Is that right?
It is, yes. It has been increasing. We exactly don't know why. Some people argue that maybe it has been always that way, but maybe today we have more specific ways to identify children. I want to mention that Colorado is one of the states where we have a late diagnosis on children. Many of the children who are diagnosed in Colorado are already in elementary school. And so that's interesting, because that doesn't happen in some other states. But nonetheless, it means that we have children over there that could be either in preschool age, or maybe, toddlers who are not being identified yet.
And I understand it's very important to identify children with autism early as well.
It is.
So they can get the services they need.
Yes.
At an early age.
Early intervention is key
Mm-hmm.
for that child to be exposed to different resources and different whatever they need. If they need some therapy, like speech therapy, occupational, or just the social skills piece, that
Right.
is, something that most of them need. So the earlier that you get those services, is the better.
Mm-hmm. And what could a parent do of a young child? Maybe they have some concerns, but they're not really sure. What would you suggest that they do if they have concerns that their child might have some issues related to autism?
I think that's very, very important, because we'll see many parents when they see the children, but they don't know exactly what's going on. Like in my personal experience, when my son was maybe 1 year old, year and a half, I started to see that his behavior was different. He got frustrated very easily. His behavior when he was frustrated was completely different than my other two children that I had at home. He would hit himself, sometimes very badly. I didn't know why. I didn't know what to do about it. By that time, it was really difficult for me to understand why he was having those kind of responses of frustrations. What was the triggers that he had that he would be exposed, and then he would have this kind of response to either environment or some kind of trigger. Could be even something as easy as I moved some object that he was playing with, or it would be things that I didn't have the little clue about what was going on. And so for the parents who see with concern behavior when the children are very young and maybe they don't have the vocabulary yet to say I am mad or why I'm mad, or so it's very easy to look for this for these signals. Also the communication piece for children with autism, the fact that some of them don't speak, they have a delay in speech. And it's very interesting to see that the children who are on the side of the spectrum where the Asperger's syndrome is, those children don't have any problem usually with speech. So that's kind of tricky because
I think that's part of what differentiates them, right, in terms of the diagnosis.
yes, so that would be kind of tricky because then it would be some parts that are similar, but then in that part, the speech would be there. So, but the social skills are something that you could see how the child behaves with other children or how he behaves even with siblings. When he likes to be in a corner just playing by himself, and he doesn't really engage in playing with some other peers, and the fact that some of them could not be verbal or their speech would be delayed.
And so where would a parent go if they had concerns? Who should they contact if they're wondering if maybe their child has issues related to autism?
Well, I think that, as I mentioned before, you could visit our website, the Autism Society of Boulder County. But I think it's very important also that the parent could talk to some kind of professional, a pediatrician, for instance, who could say, well, we could do an assessment. In my case, I talked to my pediatrician, and he sent me over to JFK Partners in Denver.
Yes, and my understanding is they have a very extensive assessment team.
Yes.
And what's great about that, especially to diagnose something like autism, is there's so many different elements to it. Yes. And so my understanding of the JFK centers, they have a speech-language pathologist, yes. They have a social worker that gets a history, a psychologist, et cetera. And so they're able to do a very comprehensive evaluation, which is important, I think, with that particular diagnosis.
It's a big team. It's a big team. So the thing is that once you have the diagnosis, then in the community, there are many ways that you can connect. One of the ways that you can connect with services also is Imagine. In Lafayette, they are a center. And Imagine can also connect you either way with Child Find, or Child Find can connect you with Imagine too. And they can provide services for children who are under the age of 3. Once that the child gets to the age 3, then they can, through the Part C of the services, they can connect to the school district, and then they can get into a preschool services, and that's wonderful because that really helps.
Well, I really appreciate you being here, Eugenia, and sharing this important information with our audience. And I'm sure we'll have questions for you as we get them. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our next parent, Leanne Paskvalich. And Leanne, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a parent of 2 teenagers. They're both here in high school in the Boulder Valley School District. And the reason I'm here tonight is to talk about support groups. One of my children has special needs, and it was when he was 4 years old that we kind of came to knowing what was going on with him, and I really felt like I needed support from other parents. So at that time, he was in preschool, and I started to talk to other parents, and I felt like they were going through some of the same challenges and emotions that I was at the time. And so I started a support group. The support group at that time was mainly preschool-age children. It included parents of children with all special needs. It wasn't disability specific per se. And at that time, I think that was really helpful because we were all kind of getting to know the system and Boulder Valley and how things work and with IEPs. So that's really initially how it got started. That support group lasted 3 or 4 years, and then I kind of moved on and focused on just my son's education and working with the school district to make sure he got the education that he needed. And then about 4 years ago, when he was starting middle school, I felt again like I needed support from other parents. So another group started up, and I mean, basically what we put out on our emails is our support group is an opportunity to meet and talk with people who may share some of the same challenges, frustrations, and emotions that come with helping a child with some special physical, emotional, or educational needs. And so the emphasis for our group is just informal and casual conversation among parents who likely share some common experiences.
And so that group continues today.
It does.
And if parents want more information about it, how would they go about that?
They could probably go to your website, and maybe we could put a link there.
Okay.
I know of other resources and other support groups in the area. Mine is definitely not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I think parents, if they're looking for a support group, could contact Anna Stewart with the Parent Support Center here in the district. Autism Society of Boulder County, like Eugenia mentioned, also has support groups. So there are a variety, but I think the first step for parents is just reaching out. And these people who I mentioned who may be able to hook them up with a support group, I think people, when they're contacted, do their best to find a good fit for a parent for a support
And I
group.
guess if a parent watching is interested, they can contact me, and then I can put them in touch with
that
you
would be
as
fine.
well. The part of your story that I find most interesting, Leanne, is I think for many of us as parents, when we come up against challenges with our kids, we're often paralyzed by them. And you were in a situation where you realized that there was a need for more parent support, and it wasn't there. And I'm just really impressed that you made it happen. I mean, I think that's a very empowering story. And I think it's important for our parent viewers to know, because a lot of times, again, individual parents, I think, feel helpless in situations like this. And one of the things about the panel that I'm so excited about, as you'll discover, is many of the parents here tonight saw issues that they were concerned about regarding their kids, regarding kids in our community. And instead of doing what most of us do, which is be frustrated and, complain and be upset about it, I'm sure they were all those things too, but then they did something about it. And this is just a single parent, that was able to put this together, and it's a group that's been going on for a number of years, and I just think it's fantastic, Leanne.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you were able to put it together. Was it difficult to do? I mean, making that happen?
I don't think so. We had a core group there was interest from the beginning, and really right now our group is word of mouth. People come to our group maybe just once. People may come every month, and it's based on needs of the parents. You just may need to come and vent, and that's okay. It's a good, safe place to do that. You may have an issue that you just can't figure out, or you're anxious or really angry about, and just to have someone or talk through with a group solutions for those family issues and school issues. I think it's a great arena for that.
I know that, having worked as a school psychologist, I know that when parents have kids in special education, what comes with that, in addition to great additional supportive services, is a ton of paperwork, meetings, a lot of jargon that many parents don't even understand. And so I'm curious, does your support group also help parents with that, understanding IEPs, et cetera?
We do. Any issue that a parent comes to us with, we really try and problem solve it. If, I may not know the answer, or we're just puzzled by it, we follow up on it and help this parent. I've even gone to meetings with some parents just to, hold their hand and sit by them and get them through it, because quite honestly, these meetings and school, the jargon like you spoke of, really make parents anxious. And they want the best for their kid, and it's an emotional journey for them. Whereas for me, I can kind of see it more in black and white and add some perspective to it, and I feel like I can really help parents by doing that.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I discovered when I was meeting with the parents on the panel tonight is there was a common thread, and one of the common threads was that in a lot of different ways, a lot of the parents on the panel tonight learned how to effectively partner with school staff. I think this is another issue for parents when they have challenging kids, challenging issues. You know, it's easy to kind of get a little frustrated with the school and the system and staff in the building. And I think a lot of the parents on our panel, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about it during our time together today, have discovered that, you know, there's really effective ways to work and collaborate with teachers, whether it's a special ed child or a gifted child, et cetera. And so hopefully we'll talk about that too during our panel tonight. Thank you, Leanne.
Thanks.
Our next parent is Leisha Connors-Bauer. Leisha, tell us about yourself.
Okay, Jan, sure. So I am the parent of a newly minted teenager who attends Southern Hills Middle School. And while I'm here in my parent capacity tonight, I also work for the Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance. And since we've been talking about how important it is for parents to support each other and have the opportunity to talk to each other, I thought I would slip in a brief commercial
Okay.
for the Parent Engagement Network kickoff on Wednesday titled, How Are All the Children? I think that this kickoff also relates to some of the topics that we've been covering tonight, and that is Wednesday, September 14th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. here at the Ed Center. And I think it's a good opportunity for parents to hear information that impacts kids as well as hear directly from kids of things that impact them. So back to my parent role. Part of the reason why I wanted to be on the panel is, so my son is was identified as talented and gifted, and he has struggled with certain academic pieces, and one of those pieces has been homework. That has really created a lot of frustration for him and a lot of frustration within our household. And so one of the things we've had to try to do is figure out how to successfully navigate that so that our family life is smoother and his academic life is a little bit smoother.
And what's your feeling at any point of view about homework in general? I know it's kind of a controversial topic.
It is kind of controversial. I think that homework is really helpful for certain topics. I think that in math, it's really helpful because I think the more practice you get with math and some of those problems, the easier it gets. And I've actually looked and seen some of the research that shows that for certain topics, it is really helpful. I think where homework can be challenging is the amount, sometimes the homework that's given, how long it takes a student. I think we estimate that it should be a certain amount of time per subject or a certain amount of time per night. But for different students, catch on to concepts in different ways. And so what may take one student 15 minutes to complete may take another student 45 minutes to complete. And so that just seems to create a whole host of perceptions around the student's ability to learn that they internalize themselves. One of the things that we ran into is when my son would get frustrated within his homework, he would either become frustrated because it wasn't perfect, or he would become frustrated because it took him longer than he thought it was supposed to take for him to do it. And that also just generated, I think, a lot of stress for him that maybe wasn't really helpful.
I know, working as a psychologist with children and families, boy, it's such a common referral issue that a lot of the conflict at home is at night around homework. And I guess part of my confusion with that is when you do look at the research, and I'm no expert, but I've seen a little bit of the research, it's really surprising in terms of the low correlations that we see between homework and achievement, especially in elementary school, which apparently there's zero correlation, which is kind of hard to believe, but the research has been pretty consistent. So, do you think that maybe we should look at that as a community? You know, one of the things I always wonder about with our children is when do they have time for social interaction and really good old-fashioned playing with their friends? I know a lot of that's online today, but it seems like with the amount of homework they have, it makes it tough to include those socialization opportunities. Also just fun times with the family together, doing something fun together, which I'm thinking for most families, trying to get your kid to do their homework is not necessarily one of those fun activities. But what do you think? Do you think it's something that we should look at as a community in terms of homework?
I absolutely. I mean, because we talk about things like student success and academic achievement, and we still think about them in the traditional measurements in terms of GPA, class rank, test scores, and there are different measures of success. There are different measures of success that we employ as adults, and I think that we need to also take a look at what are some of those different measures of success for our students as well. And so I think sometimes as adults we sort of perpetuate this idea that because we learned in a particular way, we had homework, we did this, then that's the way we want to see our kids learn. When there's also some research that shows that kids today learn in different ways. They're much more visual learners than maybe we might have been when we were younger. And so I think that's why it's a good idea to take a look at it systemically to see where is it beneficial, where does it really have impact for our kids, and take a look at it that way. Because I also think that when you look at stuff like you were describing, students who have hours of homework to do, it impacts so many things. It impacts their stress level. It impacts their perception of school. It impacts, the amount of sleep that they get, how healthy they feel, especially if they're feeling stressed all the time. And I'm not going to say that homework is the cause of all stress in all kids, but I think it's something that if it's something that we can control, then it's something that we should take a look at as a community.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're very aware, because I learned a lot of this from you and the great work that your organization does around the Youth Risk Behavior Survey and other surveys of our children in our community, that kids often identify stress as a key factor in terms of depression, substance abuse, suicide. And so to me, that's an important topic, I think, for us as a community to be thinking about. How can we take out some of that stress? And a lot of times when you think about a 6 or 7-year-old kid, you just think, oh, they don't have any stress in their life. But it's not really the case, unfortunately, as we know, right, from research that you guys have done here in the community.
Well, and I think you're referring to a few years ago, I had surveyed done a convenience sample at 2 elementary schools in the Boulder Valley School District and asked kids if they could tell me what stress is. And it was a written thing, so it was 2nd through 5th grade. And each of those kids could tell me what stress was, what makes them feel stressed, what they do to relieve stress. And I thought that was really fascinating that kids as young as 2nd grade could identify that. Mm-hmm. And when we looked at the definitions that they were providing, it was definitions of what we as adults would consider stress.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, we appreciate you being here, Alicia.
Thank you.
I would like to introduce our next parent, Julie Watson-Smith. Julie, tell us something about yourself.
Thank you for having me here tonight, Dan. I'm a mother of 3 kids. I have a 2nd grader, a 4th grader, and a 5th grader, and 2 of them have been identified as TAG, or talented and gifted. And so I'm here to talk about some of the challenges that they face and how we can build a community to support not just TAG kids, but our students all around.
Mm-hmm. What kind of challenges have you found with your kids in terms of that issue?
Well, a lot of the challenges are typical challenges, just the struggles of growing up. But with 2 of my kids that have been identified, it's the fitting in piece. Because they learn differently, they view the world a little bit differently, they don't feel like they have that comfort zone of, oh, I'm just going to go and toss the ball. Their mind is working in a different way. And so they've really struggled with feeling that place of fitting in.
And I often wonder, I don't know what your experience has been with this, and Alicia, you can speak to it too, but I often wonder that, when parents hear about TAG kids, it's more difficult for them to empathize because, oh, the kids are so smart, what are those parents complaining about? Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's part of the challenge. And also if you could speak to, in your experience with your children, any kind of stigma related to TAG populations and how they're perceived by others.
Absolutely, and I think there's been an example recently. There was a local magazine that came out, and on the front cover depicted TAG children as Spock-like. And that really rubbed me the wrong way because there has to be a level of education. It's not that TAG kids are superior or better or worse. They learn differently. And they have unique challenges or unique ways to view the world. And often what they need is that social piece. But that's not the message that's given when you think about TAG kids. You think, well, they're just focusing on academics, they're brainiacs, they're this, they're that. But these kids have real challenges that way. And so at school they might be called a nerd or a dork, or, oh, you're so smart, you have to go do this. And some of those messages come from the top down, because that's what other parents may have seen, when they grew up. That's what they were told. Oh, those TAG kids, they're the smart ones, they don't have any challenges, or they think they're better. And so there does have to be a level of education from the top down.
And when you talk about the socialization issues, can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. I'm a big advocate for whole child education and growth and development. It's not just the academic piece. When kids are learning, they also have to learn how to be a functioning citizen. Learn those pieces of how do I interact with someone, the emotional growth. And in my case, in my experience with my children, they can relate very well with adults. They struggle relating with kids their age. And there has to be a piece of learning how to deal with kids their age, and also giving them permission to just be a kid. And that's a huge part of, for TAG kids, their emotional growth and just their overall development, is giving them permission.
I'm guessing when we talk about bullying in October, on October 3rd, which is our next televised presentation, I think we're going to be coming back to this issue, because it kind of makes you wonder if we did more. And I know that teachers are very busy. I know the curriculum is very full. There's very little extra time in the day. But it does make you wonder if we did a little bit more in the way of social education, if you will, whether that might not affect school climate, bullying, et cetera. So it's something for us to really think about.
Absolutely. I agree. I would love to see more pro-social strategies being taught, and not just with TAG kids, because a TAG kid can either be bullied or can be the bully. They're not different from any other child in that respect. But if there's a way we can have a spirit of empathy that's not just focused at the kids, but the community as a whole, the parents, the educators, and the children. And that way we can come together as a community to support that growth.
One of the things that we talked about earlier is the idea of empowerment, and really empowering families to support their children, to support each other. Mm-hmm. And when we spoke, one of the things that you told me about, which I thought was really interesting, and I'm hoping you could tell us more about it, is the Families in Transition program that you had heard about.
Mm-hmm. My family recently went through our own transition, and whether that transition is a divorce, a death, military family, but there's a need for that. And I made sure that I took the steps, and I talked to the teachers about what was going on and took more of a proactive stance. Instead of waiting for like the other shoe to fall and something to come up with my kids, I went and talked to the teacher and said, here's what's going on in our family life. Just want to let you know, let's work together as a team. I made sure the kids knew that. And I wasn't aware of a group that supported them until just recently. I heard about a school where the parents came together, and they have a school-wide sign-up sheet to help, very similar to the support groups that we were talking about earlier. They'll provide meals for parents in transition. The parent just has to call and request it. They will go with them to any meetings. They'll sit there and just hold their hand, or if somebody just needs a hug. And the school has gotten behind that, and it's created such a strong sense of community and that spirit of empathy that I was talking about. And the school itself has become stronger, and they're seeing improvements in the kids' behavior. And they don't have the hard concrete statistics right now on what their testing grades are, but the kids have more focus. They feel engaged. And I think that's a really powerful concept, and something I'd like to see addressed and brought up in more schools.
I know that for a lot of different important areas like substance abuse and other things, sometimes there's a sense in not just our community, but any community, why isn't the school district doing more about that? And the fact of the matter is, the school district shares responsibility, but we have responsibility too as parents. And it's just one of the things that I think is so admirable about this program that you mentioned, the Families in Transition, is this was kind of like what Leanne was talking about earlier. These are parents supporting other parents, not waiting for some program to be created by the district or the government. And given our economy, waiting might be a long wait at this point. And I just think it's really encouraging, to hear about programs like that and how powerful parents can be, if they just kind of put themselves out there and support each other.
Absolutely. The responsibility for our children isn't just on educators or just on parents or just on the child itself. It's all of our responsibility to step in and make a difference and do what we can to support them and be there and give them that safe place for them to grow and be the best they can be.
Well, I appreciate that, Julie. And I'm sure we'll be talking more tonight about some of these issues as we get questions from our viewers.
Thank you.
I have a tag team set of parents next. Two parents that actually were involved in some similar work in the community, and we're going to have the opportunity to hear from both of them. And that is Pat Whitaker and Dr. Gary Kahn. And Pat, maybe you can start us off by just letting us know a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I was a parent. I have two children. When my daughter entered freshman year of high school, it was a little bit different than what she was, used to. And I was going to some of the Penn programs, and I just was not only seeing her being tired at home and not, being a good student. I can't get to sleep. I've got to get up early to go to school, and the cycle got a little vicious. And I was going to Penn programs, and then you were writing some articles about teen sleep deprivation in your Thrive newsletter, and I just started feeling in my gut, this is wrong, and what can I start finding out about this? And I just kind of started bearing witness to what other parents were saying, and felt that I needed to somehow speak out about this, that it wasn't okay for our kids to be suffering, and what can be done about it. And at one point I got together with a couple other parents after a Penn program, and we actually set up a meeting with Chris King, superintendent at that time, and he met with us, and then he charged Deirdre Pilch, who's still with us, to start a committee to look at this, and so I served on the district committee. And that was a good learning experience for me to understand the inner workings of the district and why things couldn't progress, or what were the restrictions. And so there were things I found out, such as online learning and things, the whole issue around, transportation, athletics, this is why we don't do it, sort of the status quo. And it really became a mission of, we're Boulder, can we be a little more progressive? And there were people that were thinking, yes, we could look at things a little more progressively. There's other communities that have tried Late Start. And then when I found out, two things. One was there was actually the physiological reason behind why teens are wanting to stay up later and sleeping in the morning. It's because their body is releasing the hormone, the melatonin, which helps induce sleep. They release it at a later cycle time than adults. And so, we're ready to go to bed and the kids are still awake, right? Well, I was like, gosh, this is sort of a no-brainer. So why are we making kids go in with a traditional system? This isn't working to their body structures. So that was one thing. But also then when I found out through the committee that the educational community knew about all the research on Late Start, then I was like, so why aren't we changing? So we had that was 2 years ago that I first met with Chris King, and it really, it came down to sort of a status quo situation, but thanks to, I would say, the leadership of Don Stensrud at Fairview, who was willing to pilot a program. You had written a column about Late Start and talked to your principal, because principals were willing to work one-on-one with individual students and their families, but for me, it was a matter of the families need to know this, and so your article brought that forth, and a parent came to a Fairview parent meeting and asked about that, and it just evolved into Don saying, well, let's start a committee, and it was really just, I think, the stars all aligned, because we had, Gary came in and other parents, that we all just became this committee that did what was needed to be done per Don's request to try and follow through and see whether we could indeed survey families. Was this a good idea? How could we deal with transportation issues or concerns around, you know, the IB program or sibling care for children at home. And so there were a lot of components that we addressed. And so thankfully, my daughter, being now a senior, can sleep in a half hour later in the morning, and I can attest to the fact that, you know, in our family, it's much better. I get to see my daughter in the morning, and she's feeling better. And so far, input from other families, the parents seem delighted. The kids seem better rested. It really, you talk about coping skills for children. I think that kids were, what I was seeing at the Penn programs were just a lot of parents in pain because of issues around drinking, drug abuse, cutting, you know, kids with anxiety so bad they can't even step into a school. And that just felt, in my gut, really wrong, and we as a society need to be addressing this. And education is what comes first for our children in a school. And there was a researcher, Mary Karskinen at Brown, who is a sleep researcher, and she pointed out that we do a very good job of teaching our children about the food pyramid, and we've all heard from Ann Cooper, right, and all the food changes, but we don't teach our children that sleep is at the base of the life pyramid, and that really has resonated for me all along. And I just think that if our kids are not rested, they're not able to cope, they're not able to learn, and I'm just delighted that Don has led the charge to make the change, and we're hopefully going to follow up this year and see if it's working. And, you know, it's just about respecting what's going on in our kids' lives and being parents that can do something to help make it better for them. It's really a wellness issue.
And when you first started on this effort, Pat, was it intimidating at all? I mean, you're one parent, and this is a big district, and what was the feeling like at the beginning?
Well, it's intimidating right now even, but like I said, it really was one of those things in my gut. I just felt like, how can I not speak out? You know, I felt there needed to be a voice for the families that I saw at these Penn programs that were like, yes, you know, these things are just wrong, but what do we do? And it just felt like there needed to be an awareness raised. These are people who have children that have some serious health issue, you know, mental health, physical health issues, and these are not the people that are getting together saying, oh, my kid got straight A's on the report card. These are people that are probably very quiet and sort of hidden away because of their pain and their issues. And I just felt like we need to bring that to the surface, and we need to see what we can do preventively to put you out of work. No. But, you know, I mean, instead of having the kid in therapy.
We've run out of time.
Sorry, Jan. But, you know, how do we help kids and families function better? You know, kids don't have a choice. They have to be in school. And so it's not like at the university where they can choose. I don't want to go to an 8 o'clock class. You know, I want to sleep in. These kids have to be there. And I really was concerned about the whole. You know, why should just transportation of a few or the athletic concerns of a few direct what is the whole population? You know, I think these things we need some flexibility, and so there seems to be some tweaking room, and I'm just happy to see that. And I think, like you said, collaborating is much better. Being an advocate in collaboration is much better than trying to just be angry and alienate people in district. I mean, we're all in this to help the kids.
And, you know, my sense, and I'm really curious to hear from you, having experienced it firsthand, Pat, is that, and maybe that's not true of all school districts, but I think the Boulder Valley School District is really very receptive to parent concerns. Was that your experience, that people wanted to hear what you had to say?
Yes, I felt that I was quite honestly surprised that I had a meeting with Chris King. I thought, oh, okay. So, you know, we did that, and then it trickled down, and going to these district committee meetings, I got to meet a couple of the other principals and people that were working in different departments. And so that was good. And it, like I said, I was the rookie, and I was a bit ignorant, and it was a learning curve for me. And I think that's what parents need to do is just step up, get involved, find out what's going on, and then try to work together to come up with some creative solutions. Because I would think most of the people that are hired in through the school district got involved because of wanting to work with kids. So, and many of them are parents as well. So I think if we can work together, it's really for this next generation that we're putting out in society. And somebody had spoken to that before about, just because I think Leisha, just because we were raised that way, well, does that mean it's the best way? Is this really working for our current society with the technology issues that our kids, is online learning a better way to go? How can they do their homework? I mean, there were just a lot of interesting things I learned. One of which was a study that showed with the online learning programs, these kids are getting on like at 10 in the morning and working till 8 at night, the majority of kids. So that's kind of telling that that's when they feel best prepared to get in and start doing the work. So little tidbits like that, I think, we need to share that. We need to have the dialogue.
Will you be able to get us to a 10 a.m. start time, Pat?
Well, I think I have heard Don say he'd like to get to 9 o'clock, and I think the issue is how flexible are families that are in, their kids are in activities. I mean, if you're in athletics, do you practice before school? I know that it's a conflict right now with Fairview being right next to Southern Hills. So how do you make it so that kids aren't getting out at the same time, and the traffic issues, and there's also the Montessori school. So there are little glitches that need to be worked out. But what I am saying is that I think that things can be worked out, and we need to get creative and just spend time thinking about it and stop just resting on our laurels or resting in the status quo that we have good potential. And I would hope that we will get some input soon. I'd love to get feedback. Maybe some people will comment in about, is it working for you?
And speaking about that, we have just about 15 minutes left, a little less for this program. Still an opportunity, those viewing at home, get off that couch, head towards the computer, send us a question for the panel. We'd love to hear from you. I'd like to introduce our final parent, Dr. Gary Kahn. Dr. Kahn, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here tonight.
Well, I'm the parent of two young men that go to Fairview. They're both they're twin boys and they're seniors. And one of them is very into the academic scene. The other one is more into the music scene. But they're it was very interesting as a person trained in family practice and preventive medicine to actually start experiencing some of the kinds of things that I'd been reading about a little bit in the medical literature, but it didn't really strike me as really important until it became a factor in my own life. And let me be a little bit more specific. And one of the things that Pat mentioned was the issue of the circadian rhythm, or the biologic clock, if you will, changing. I had the notion that if, my kids needed to get more sleep, they should just go to bed earlier. And I think a lot of us would say that, just start going to bed a little earlier so that you can, and finish your homework up so you can sleep long enough. It turns out that kids need actually between 9 and 9.25 hours of sleep as in their mid to late teens. And we a lot of times assume that 6 to 8 hours like adults is sufficient, but it's not. As we all know, that as kids are younger, they actually need more sleep, but they gradually shift their biologic rhythm so that their time when they become sleepy goes from 8 or 9 or 9:30 when they're in middle school to 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it has to do with those melatonin cycles. So telling your kid to go to bed earlier won't do the job. They'll just lay there and stare at the ceiling. So that's why, and this is only a recently discovered phenomenon, and it may be in part due to the fact that we are in front of light emitting sources, and particularly light in the blue spectrum that comes off of computers and TV sets and all these things, that it is helping to make this resetting of the biologic clock. So There may be some solutions in that. The research isn't in yet, but the point is that the only way to deal with that kind of a problem is to actually change this time the school starts.
And how did you get involved in that process?
Well, it was interesting. I was at the that movie or that video called Race to Nowhere. And anybody who out there listening who hasn't had a chance to see that, I would encourage you. If you have kids in school, it's a really important program because it addresses a lot of things about our current system that may be counterproductive for the physical and mental well-being of our kids. So, but I was at that at the Boulder Theater, and Don Stensrud and yourselves were two of the panel members that were addressing this afterwards. And one of the things that came up in the film, and you guys talked about afterwards, was the idea of starting school later so our kids could get more sleep. And it really hit me. And I said, why aren't we doing this? And I went up to Don Stensrud afterwards and said, why don't you just change the start time? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, we've got a committee going. Would you be willing to help the committee do a survey of the parents? So let's see how many parents are actually in favor of doing that. And
How
so
critical was that, Gary? In other
Well,
words, if the
it's-
majority of parents said no, would it have gone further?
no,
No. It's another, I think, reflection of how much power parents have
That's right.
in the community,
that's right.
and parent
And-
voice.
And I think that it's a testament to Don Stensrud's understanding of how the politics of the system operates, that he felt, I need to get parent support before he felt like he could actually make this happen. And it happened in more than one way. We asked really two questions to the parents. And one of them was, how often do your kids arrive at school alert and ready to learn at 7:35 in the morning when school starts? And we asked the kids and the parents that. And amazingly, we had a very high percentage of the kids, especially the ones who were most affected by this, the kids who were sophomores and juniors. The seniors didn't care to answer that much, but the parents did. There were like 1,600 answers from parents, and in a school of 2,000. And so it turns out that only 10% of kids said they were always ready to alert and ready to learn when they got to school. 10%. And 70% said never, or either never or only sometimes. And the parents reflected the same thing. So it was very powerful. And then we asked them if they'd be willing to support a pilot, and high numbers in close to 88-90% said they would definitely support a late start pilot. That's hard to resist for school administrators.
And I'm going to shift now, because we just have a few minutes left. I'm going to shift now to some questions that we have for the panel to consider. Some of them, I think, are rhetorical in terms of some of the things that we've talked about. For example, my child stays up way too late doing homework and is constantly stressed about it. I want her to be in after-school activities, but I'm worried things are so out of balance due to school requirements. And that parent is looking for help in terms of the homework issue. And then we had another question. My teenager goes to school, holds a part-time job, plays sports, and is social. I feel like she is given too much homework, and she seems stressed out much of the time. Yet I feel powerless to fight the system and do much about it. Where can I go to get support and to connect with other parents? The one thing I want to mention, and Leisha mentioned it earlier, is we have a fantastic resource in this community, a well-established resource in the Parent Engagement Network. Parent Engagement Network has been around for many years, I think going on 10 years. And it's an incredible, it's now a nonprofit, an independent nonprofit organization, and their mission is solely around supporting parents and their children. And so I would really encourage people to go to the Penn website, parentengagementnetwork.com, and get involved. Go to a meeting, go to one of the talks. They also are kind enough to support our work. They're very involved in the community, helping groups like ours and others to get the word out to parents, to be supportive of parents in the community. So really take a look at that, the Parent Engagement Network. It's a wonderful resource. We're lucky to have it here in Boulder. Another question that maybe the group would like to talk about in just the few minutes that we have left. We had another sleep question. My child has trouble getting up in the morning because he stays up too late. I force him to sleep. And as Dr. Khan can tell you, you cannot force anyone to sleep if they're not tired. It doesn't really work out too well. But I think he needs more hours each night. What can I do? Get involved in the community. That's what you can do. Be a voice in the community about this concern. And then there was another question that had to do with fighting the system. And I just wanted to hear, I know we just have a few minutes left, but I wanted to hear from some of the panelists about, because the solution in my mind is not to fight with your school. That's not going to be productive. The fact of the matter is our school staffs are very dedicated to our kids. They work very hard. The truth is their agenda is our agenda, supporting our children. And I know a lot of the parents on our panel have had this experience firsthand in terms of interacting with the school. And so I want to just get a little bit of feedback from some of our panelists about this issue. Eugenia.
I think that in my case, through the years, it has been a partnership more than a fight, as you were saying. And I think that maybe you agree with me that for many of us, regardless of if we have a TAC student or a child with disability, is because at the beginning, we really don't know how to advocate. So one of the things that we need to learn about being parents is how to advocate for our child, if this is a student in a special education system, or if it's a talented and gifted student. And I wanted to mention also, to piggyback in what the panelists said about the children with talented and gifted, about the twice exceptional students, who are students who are talented and gifted and have a specific diagnosis on a disability. So these are students who have both categories, and it's also very difficult for them. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's one of the things that we should learn how to do best. I know that many parents are already the best advocates, but maybe instead of, as what you were saying, having the idea I have to fight the system, is how can we use the system and be partners in working on behalf of our children. And I wanted to mention also that the Autism Society have put in the past conferences about advocating for students with special needs.
And you had said something to me, Eugenia, when we spoke before starting our show, that one of the things that you found effective with your kids in school is to make sure that their teachers also know about their strengths.
Yes.
Their weaknesses are kind of obvious on some level, but their strengths may not be. And if the teachers know about their strengths, and they can help use those strengths to help those kids compensate for their weaknesses. Was that your point?
Definitely, yeah. Because what we can see in the schools also, if we don't participate, if we don't talk to the teachers, the teachers, they don't have like a crystal ball that they're going to have to find out, and it's going to take the whole school year to find out what the strengths are maybe, instead of if we come and talk with the teachers about what the strengths are, or we get that information. And many teachers are really good at the beginning of the school year asking, what are the strengths of your child in the classroom? What do you want me to know about your child? Many teachers are very good about that. But I think that if we don't see that, we should take the initiative and talking to the teacher, maybe send a little email, and so the teacher knows about the strengths, and we can work, the teacher can work at the classroom, and we can work at home on the strengths, based on the strengths of our kids.
And Julie, you mentioned something to me about this too. Do you want to speak about this briefly?
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned, fighting the system, and I agree with you. Fighting's not the answer. We have to respond instead of react to the issues. And I think the first line of defense is really opening those lines of communication with your child's teacher. And they may not always have the ability to reach out to you first. They've got 30 kids in there, and they're taxed. And so as parents, we've got to take that initiative and come to them and say, I want to be part of my child's education team. What do we need to do? And also make sure your child knows that you two are working together And so they know that there's this level of consistency. And, just speaking up, creating that community again. And I'm big on that spirit of community, but it makes a difference. We have to come together, because if we're all, throwing stones out there and we're not, talking with the other person or sharing the same target, we're not going to hit anything.
I'm sorry that we're running short of time. Maybe we should have stick with an hour and a half. I don't know now. I'm confused. But I want to say we just have a minute left. I just want to thank our sponsors, because without their help, this would not be possible. And they include the Boulder Counseling Cooperative, the Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance, the Boulder Public Library Foundation, Boulder Valley School District, Centennial Peaks Hospital, the Parent Engagement Network, the CAMRA, and the Hope Coalition. We really appreciate your help in making this program possible. Keep in mind that you can find out more about all of the presentations that we have, as well as watching all of our archive shows. We have archive shows from last year, and we'll have these shows archived as well. And you can find those at the Boulder Valley School District website, bvsd.org, or by visiting boulderpsychologicalservices.com. We have a link to the BVSD website as well.
Can I add something really quick?
Sure.
Really quick. I just wanted to say that listening to all of the panelists tonight, I think that the comments really serve to emphasize how we all really want our kids to be well balanced. None of us really addressed what was happening in the classroom. It was really those extraneous things. And so we're looking for our kids to have that balance in our lives. And I think that to me is what has come across as really one of the key things from all of the different panelists tonight.
And get involved. Get involved. Help us to help our kids. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
And now the planet's done its bowing down, and soon the growth returns to follow ground. But I know what's churning underneath the snow, and I love my baby, and we've miles to go. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Be with me. We'll beat this, can't you see? So wait a while, winter time. Wait a while, winter time.